Welcome to the Craske Institute. We are absolutely thrilled to have so many of you with us today who value dance history, our ballet traditions, and all that sort of thing. We have with us students of dance from high school through graduate school. Those who told us they are lifelong ballet students. I love that. Dance enthusiasts. Craske teachers and examiners from the Craske Council of America, Craske USA, and the ISTD Craske Society in the UK and Germany. Ballet school directors and former directors, performing artists and choreographers, and young dance professionals, including some from Miss Byer's New York Theater Ballet, dancers and apprentices, and we welcome you all. A good many of you are familiar with the membership organizations for teachers of ballet who have formally studied the Craske work, passed exams, been certified as teachers of the method. Yes? Those organizations include the ISTD Craske Society, which is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year, so there's a lot to see. Offshoots around the world, such as the Craske Council of America, Craske USA, others in Italy, Australia, and South Africa. So there are a lot of exam-based Craske organizations. There's also the CICB, the Craske International Classical Ballet. That's a group that was formed by those organizations I just mentioned. It serves as sort of an umbrella group, among other things. It holds ballet competitions open to dancers worldwide who come from ballet schools that belong to those exam-based membership organizations. We are a separate group. The Craske Institute is not an examining body. It's not a certifying organization, although 99.99% of our membership and supporters are people who trained in the Craske method as a syllabus with one of those organizations. Our focus is on exploring the work and life of the dancer and ballet master who was Enrico Craske. Anything related, that's what we want to deal with. Our mission, as stated on our website and other places, is to perpetuate and clarify Craske's teachings as they were originally devised and as they have evolved, and to encourage the use of the syllabus and theories in the development of ballet dancers worldwide. Most of us who began this group continue to support the membership organizations, to participate in them with our students and ourselves. But we have to remember that following a stellar performing career as a teacher, Craske worked with professional dancers, not children, professional dancers, with a focus on enhancing their full range of artistic presentation. Classroom exercises and patterns were devised to simultaneously challenge their technical mastery and to develop the stylistic expression of the performers with whom he worked, for the purpose of not merely strengthening, but of stretching the artistry of each dancer as an individual. This is the tradition that we at the Craske Institute want to preserve and to extend. So how do we do this? We've been offering a regular Wednesday morning ballet technique class that draws from what is now called major syllabus by the examining organizations. Those are Craske's classroom patterns as they were recorded in what is affectionately called the manual. For those new to the Craske work, we have a 5-week Craske elements class, which runs as interest dictates, and our Sunday lectures explore a broad range of Craske related topics. So that brings us today to today's presentation, which is one of those topics. Before I introduce our distinguished speakers, I should introduce some other folks. There were 3 of us who founded the group, myself, Barbara Gaskill, our chairman, Pamela Moore, who holds the Craske Diploma Certificate and is a coach and examiner with the Craske Council of America, and our representative in UK, Cara Drower, who was hoping to be here but wasn't sure. Cara, if you're here, go ahead and say hi. Cara holds the Cicchetti diploma also and is a coach and examiner with the ISTD Cicchetti Society. I should also note that we have two in our audience in particular, of whom you should be aware. You're all wonderful, and I wish I could talk about all of you. But Mr. Edward Hinkle, I know, is here. He studied with Miss Craske for 15 years and is a charter member of the New York Theater Ballet. I believe that's correct. If you're here, sir, go ahead and say hi, and everybody will know you because it's a big group. As well as Judith Judson, my longtime friend, author of the essay that we sent to you as an attachment with your Zoom link confirmation email. That essay, which you probably have had time to read yet, addresses the extensive reach of the Cicchetti influence in the US, which is often unrecognized. It's well recognized in the UK, but not so much here in the US. Our distinguished speakers for the day, Diana Byer. Diana Byer was a pupil of Margaret Craske for almost 20 years. As a performer, she was a soloist with Le Grand Ballet Canadien and Manhattan Festival Ballet. Ms. Byer is a founder and artistic director of the New York Theater Ballet Company and School, and she is a repetiteur for the Anthony Tudor Trust and the DeMille Working Group. And you may be aware that she coached the principal actors in the film Center Stage. With Miss Byer, we have Jean Volpe. Jean Volpe studied at the Juilliard School with Anthony Tudor and at the Manhattan School of Dance with Miss Craske. She was privileged to assist Miss Craske's advanced children's class during those years. Miss Volpe danced as a soloist with the Zurich Ballet and the Metropolitan Opera Ballet. She has taught all levels of Cicchetti technique at the Manhattan School of Dance, the 92nd Street Y, and currently teaches at both New York Theater Ballet School, obviously in New York, and the Margaret Barbieri Conservatory in Sarasota, Florida. So with no further delay, I turn it over to you, Diana, and we are all so looking forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. And I'm just delighted that you could all join us today. This is so exciting. I thought we should start by telling you first how Jean and I met Margaret Craske. And Miss Craske was my teacher, mentor, and friend, and I studied with her for just about 20 years. I first met Miss Craske as a student at the Juilliard School in the 1960s. And at that time, I was a pupil of Anthony Tudor and Alfredo Corvino. I would watch Miss Craske's classes, but I was never placed in them. And after I left Juilliard, I met Christopher Lyle, who was my partner for quite a few guesting jobs, and he wanted me to study with Miss Craske. At that time, I was kind of studying here and there and jumping from one class to the next and kind of actually getting absolutely nowhere. So I followed Christopher to one of Miss Craske's classes at Manhattan School of Dance. And I have to say, for me, I saw the light. This was who I would study with until Miss Craske retired from teaching. So Jean, what about you?
Our stories are quite the same. In 1967, I came from the Midwest to New York to study at Juilliard. And we didn't know each other at that time at Juilliard, but I studied with Tudor also. And that spring, Sally Wilson came to substitute for Tudor, who had gone to Sweden. And she suggested I study with Margaret Craske at the Manhattan School of Dance, which was located on 14th Street and 5th Avenue. So when that spring, I went to the studio, and with a brief introduction to Miss Craske, because you didn't just walk into the studio unannounced, I took my place at the back of the bar and was attempting to copy the class. And after the first side of the battement frappe exercise, she stopped the class and she said, "Hi, the girl in the pink at the back, you're crossing your coup de pied too high." And at that moment, I was convinced that there was a real teacher and that she would be my teacher. And I also continued to study with her until she retired, when my professional life allowed me to be in class. But Diana, same way, we had the same idea of studying with lots of very good teachers who gave lovely basic classes. But somehow Miss Craske would know what correction you needed, when you needed it, And I felt that her work was like a yellow brick road. And one correction led to the next correction, and one could advance that way. She had a special gift.
And sometimes that one correction would correct a multitude of sins.
Exactly.
You know, that one thing that it wouldn't be a piece here, a piece here, a piece here. It was one correction that kind of took care of so many things. That was really extraordinary. So before we really begin, I wanted to just give everyone a brief history. Margaret Craske was born in 1892 and she passed away in 1990. She was a pupil of Enrico Giacchetti, and when Giacchetti retired to Italy in 1923, she took over the teaching at his school in London. She taught and developed the Giacchetti method in England and later in the United States. And she first taught in the United States at American Ballet Theater at the request of Anthony Tudor. And she also taught at the Metropolitan Opera House, the Juilliard School, Jacob's Pillow, and Manhattan School of Dance. Her pupils included Frederick Ashton, Margot Fontaine, Robert Helpman, Anthony Tudor, Sally Wilson, Nora Kay, Alicia Alonso, Jerome Robbins, Hugh Lang, Peggy Von Prague, Melissa Hayden, Paul Taylor, and Carolyn Brown, among many, many other well-known dancers. She wrote with Cyril Beaumont, The Theory and Practice of Allegro and Classical Ballet, and with Frederica Dera de Maroda, The Theory and Practice of Advanced Allegro and Classical Ballet. And Giacchetti wrote a letter of recommendation for her, stating that she was one of the few who understood the principles of his work. So I thought most interesting would be to talk about her class. And her bar was usually 20 to 30 minutes long, always very, very simple. She said it was to prepare a dancer for the center and then rehearsal of performance, and was not to be a choreography project for the teacher. So we're going to show you a few examples from classes in 1978. It's the advanced professional class mostly, and a few examples from the children's classes. And we also have a few examples performed by some of my pupils and company members. And one thing that you should know before we start is that at Manhattan School of Dance, Miss Craske had just one small mirror on the side of the room, and she rarely used it. When she moved to my studio, there was a wall of mirrors, but I had to have curtains made, which she kept closed during class. So our first example is from a children's class, and the class was always an hour and a half. It started with Miss Craske in the middle of a circle of children, and they did stretching exercises. So Lily, can you start?
Something like that. Just don't do it. Right, take a stretching hold. Not too hard. And you know what you did? What did you do? You did that. I said stretch your hands. I was saying that up now. Jeez, do something about it. All right.
That was
I don't
me.
know. Yeah, it was Jean.
I had the privilege of assisting Miss Craske advanced children's class. And she would, if someone was not attending to a detail, she'd have me take that student aside and work on that specific thing. And sometimes if there were the younger group that needed a simplified version of something she was giving to the advanced group, I would take them aside, and then she would have them come out and show what we had been working on. She often did that, even to sometimes to the adult professionals.
Mhm.
If you were having difficulty and she felt that you could get it, she would send people out and say, work on that until you get it, and then come back into class.
Yeah, I have to say, I was sent out for 2 years for Grand Battement every single class. I did Grand Pliés, Demi Pliés, Grand Battement, Diana to the water fountain. Very long time. So next, the children either did a folk dance step or a mazurka or a polonaise, or just something that moved in a circle before they went to the bar. And these are just a few examples of the kinds of things she gave. So the pliés, at least during my time, never changed. It was always 4 in second, 4 in first, 2 fifth front, and 2 fifth back. And they were done on one side only, since we did fifth front and fifth back. The children and the professional class always did the same pliés, and the port de bras, as you see, was extremely simple. So Lily, just show the pliés. This is from the professional class.
One of it. That's fair. It's not forecast today. All right. Just keep it rather easy. And
I'd like to just say, to quote the Cicchetti, that the Grand Plie was to perfect equilibrium and make joints and muscles pliant. And throughout all of the Cicchetti syllabus and manual and everything that Miss Craske always said, everything should be with no force, and that you want the joints and the muscles to be as free and as soft. And Diana, remember the second, we always did the second, just barely a foot length separate.
Right.
And that, because then you're really stretching your ankle. And I think the concentration of the plie being just with no port de bras, very basic arm down the fifth en bas, was so you can concentrate on the back and the why you're doing the plie. It's so you get a lot done in very little time.
Yeah. And not to show any effort as well.
Absolutely.
Not to show any effort in the movement whatsoever. The next thing we did was demi-plie. Oh, you know what? I wanted to point out a few people in the class. The gentleman in the front of the bar with the black tights and only one elastic, that's Hans Meister, who is director of the Zurich Ballet. And behind him was Margaret Kaufman-Pankoff. She and her husband directed Les Grands Ballets Canadiens for many, many years. Betty Jones was on the left. She was principal dancer with the Lamone Company, the original Lamone Company. She had on kind of a grayish brown leg warmers with an orangey leotard, and Edward Henkel was in the front of the other bar. So when Stephen Peer is in the class, he danced with the Royal Danish Ballet, and I think with the Lamone Company, and he now directs the Hart School. That's a conservatory at the University of Hartford. So the next thing was demi-plies, and we usually did it with a retiré or a passe or a slow tendu. And we're not going to show those, but they were very simple, done very slowly. And again, with no port de bras, just slightly opening the arm with the plie, just so that it followed the knee out to the side. And then the third exercise was always grand battement, always. And she said that you did these bigger movements at the beginning of the bar to get the blood flowing to the big outside muscles. And then you did the smaller, quicker things to get the blood to the ligaments and tendons that were closer to the bone. And when you watch it, just to note the timing is up on the end and down on the one. So Lily, can we show the grand battement?
And
And I just want to, I'd like to point out that the older gentleman in the white t-shirt is Robert Osorio, who did dance with the Marquis de Cuevas Company, and he was the owner of the school, of Manhattan School of Dance. Yeah, so Grand Battement, she was really worked hard on getting it right from the foot, like a hinge, not starting from the hip, and not taking it. If she didn't want you to take it so high that placement was upset, that the placement of the spine was upset. So it was a natural movement.
But once one had the back and you were up on the hip, she didn't hold the leg down. You could go
Correct,
up
yeah.
as high as one could do it correctly. And the other thing that Miss Craske always insisted on, and I think also comes from Cicchetti, is she didn't want any severe break in the lower back with the grand battement derrière, because the spine, all the curve should include all the spine, not this hinge where it's just at a right angle. So that required you to take your weight a little more forward, but that was a hallmark of Miss Craske, always weight forward. Don't you remember, Aunt Diana?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, she wanted the whole half circle in the arabesque. So the whole spine was being used. Yeah, not at a right angle, which was, it took time. If you were tight under the shoulder blades, that was something that took time. And she didn't ever have the class. She never taught a class so that everyone looked terrific. It was a class where you worked on things that you couldn't do. You really worked. And she was patient. If the spine was a little tight, she was patient until it got better and better. And then what Jean said, once you could maintain the posture and things, yes, take the leg up, but not take it up and distort the movement. So the next thing we did was tendus, and the tendus were done as a rebound, usually, to train the foot for jumping and point work. And sometimes we did, at the end of the rebound tendus, say we did them in 5th, 16, and 16 in 1st, then we did a pressure tendu front and back that was more to shape the foot. So Lily, why don't we show that? Jean, any comments on tendu?
Well, it's very interesting. I'll go back, quote Cicchetti again, is to force the instep well outwards and to strengthen and stretch all the muscles. And I think that's the only time I've read the word force. It was just to keep the heel forward. Otherwise, everything was to be rhythmic and not forced. I think all of the bar is based on rhythm and the particular rhythm of what each step requires. So, and Miss Craske never to sickle the foot. That was always heel forward, always.
And worked on it all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
Jumping, every always.
So next was dégagé, and that was training the foot for petit allegro. And she would do 16 and then sometimes maybe throwing the foot out, or 16 in 1st, 16 in 5th, different. And I think a lot was sometimes when she looked at the class and saw what the class needed that day. Would you say that, Jean?
Oh, absolutely.
I don't think the class was planned ahead of time. She used her eyes to see what people needed.
It was never by rote a formula at all.
Yeah. So this is just a dégagé exercise. And I think you can see that we're having 2 company members and 2 children doing the same exercise, and the bar for the children's class and the professional class was very, very similar. Sometimes the children's class a little simpler, maybe a little slower, but extremely similar. And the next thing we did was the rond de jambe, and she was, I think, very, very careful to make sure that the foot was in front and behind the first, and never ever going across in front of the fifth position, never crossing over to the fifth in the rond de jambe à terre. So, Lily? Jean, anything on rond de jambe?
I think she always wanted never to overcross, so you maintain your turnout. The whole point of the exercise is to work the turnout of the leg. And I think that when you do swerve in, it automatically turns the thigh in. Also, it was always very important, again, with the bringing the heel forward. And when you went on to da, that you came around with the turnout and leading from the heel. Those were always things that she emphasized. And certainly that comes, you know, directly from Cicchetti, the use of the foot in that way.
And also the timing for the rond de jambe, that the 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2,
Yeah,
3,
there's
and
really
that
no
little on the end, that stretch.
Yeah.
You know, it was very important to get that stretch so that each rond de jambe finished on the echo of that last beat, that it finished. And she really made a fuss about that if you didn't finish it. So the next thing we did was an adagio, and it always changed from day to day. Again, I think, you know, depending what she saw people needed. Sometimes we were working on développés, sometimes on an adagio pirouette, like, you know, with a retiré 1, plie 2, and a smooth pirouette, working on the head movement when it's an adagio pirouette. Sometimes working on balances, that we do a développé to second and then to retiré and take the hand off and find a gentle balance. So I just picked something from, this is développé second turning to the arabesque.
And
Yep, that was a hallmark of what Miss Craske taught, was the lift. You can see it in what they did, the example of lifting into the center, off the hip, supporting hip. And the développé was not done from the knee, where it sticks, the knee is up and then a foot goes. It was from the foot. And there was a lift in the core, and the waist was lifted off the hips, that she always insisted on, and the weight be centered over the foot. that was, we always were to work on that. And
Mhm. But I think also what you were talking about the whole spine taking part of the arabesque, that's Linda Casper was the woman in the front. I think she's on today. And you could see that it's not way forward. It's not dropped forward. She's still very up on the hip, but the whole spine is taking the curve and not just a drop in the waist.
Mhm.
And then the rest of the spine kind of like a poker. So the next thing we always did was frappe. And it was done to train the foot for jumping and point work. And it was always with a strike against the floor. And I remember, Jean, if you remember this, Miss Craske said it was like ducks and drakes.
yeah,
Do you remember that?
So it was like skimming a stone
The
if you would
stones.
the top of a lake, and it wouldn't sink, it would just like that. I remember that.
Yeah, and
That
she
was
always
her
called
image.
ducks and drakes. I had no idea what ducks and drakes were until she explained it, not a clue. But she would bring that image up often.
Hmm.
So this is frappe.
16 plain, 16 double, and then in the middle of the platform. Teacher standing on something on top of the and
Back to Cicchetti, he says the frappe is to render the muscles elastic for good elevation. And again, he's always talking about not forcing. Again, when the frappe is done with rhythm, you're not having to force any muscle. You're not banging the knee in a hard way. And I think that was always how Miss Craske taught them.
Yeah. Yeah, she always for frappe said the knee is soft and stretched and the foot is sharp. It's
Mhm.
not the knee sharp, because I remember she used to say, you break your knee.
Mm.
Remember when to not jam the knee so that
Mhm.
that was sharp. It was just all for the foot. And we would do, 16 single, 16 double, and then a tag of something like you just saw. And then she would sometimes in something like that work on the spring releve.
Mhm.
And not do it as a jump. It was like a soft spring almost along the floor, but not along the floor. And sometimes that would be added into the frappe.
And
Or
they
we
were
did
always,
frappe. Hmm.
they were always quick.
Yeah.
Quick.
Yeah, always quick. And sometimes we would do frappe with a plie and then raise to the quarter point with a frappe. So plie and frappe, but raising up just to the quarter point. We did often. The next thing was stretching, and I think, at least in my time, they were always the same. Same for the children, same for the adults. The children never did it with the leg on the bar to the back. They didn't do the back. And I'll show you later what they did. So this is an example of the stretch to the front and the stretch to the back. And to the back, you'll see some of the class on the floor doing the stretch and some at the bar. And if you had a stiffness in the hip or in the upper back, Miss Craske wanted you to do it on the floor because it didn't strain the back in the same way as having your leg on the bar, but it did the same thing for the body. So.
all right. And okay, live, please. That's good, Mary.
I love the one to the front with that gorgeous bend in the back. So beautiful. So after the bar, the children did back bends holding on to the bar, and adults did the same movement away from the bar in the center. Though if you weren't very loose under the shoulder blades, you did it at the bar as a professional dancer, just to find that difficult space, you know, under the shoulder blades. It's so hard to maintain when you're an adult, to maintain the suppleness in that part of the spine. And the adults did other back exercises after the bar as well. And we're just going to show you one of those. So Lily?
Diana, I think that the one thing that Miss Craske, and this comes from Cicchetti, that a respect for the body, and that there wasn't, you didn't do any violence of stretching or violence to the body. It was all within what the range of motion that one had naturally and could then expand and stretch and build on that. But there weren't the stress fractures and things that we find so much today. It was all very much with high respect for the body. I think Miss Craske never.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember her saying that Mother Nature knows better than you do. I remember her saying things like that. So in the children's class, after they did the big bends, they always did Allegro steps holding on to the bar, like starting to learn things. So we're going to show you échappé with one beat, brise soutenu, and then how she began teaching the children brise volet at the bar.
And and you're still thinking like this, Sandy, instead of thinking this way. Wait a minute, that was a little better. No, they didn't go across. Second one. This was.
Yeah, and they did pas de chas, assemblée soutenue, jetés and attitude, all kinds of things just from scratch to learn all the skill level. It was all about learning the skill level and not teaching to talent. It was teaching to teach skill.
Yeah, at the basic, for the children at the basic level.
Yeah. So we went into the center for the professional class, did the back exercises. Usually we did 3, like 2 kind of for the shoulder blades and then the big bend. And then we did port de bras, and we not only worked on the 8 Cicchetti port de bras, but she would also make up some gorgeous, gorgeous combinations. We would work on expression of movement, how to use the eyes, the expression of the hand. She would sometimes have us do the same port de bras, but to 2 different kinds of music. The first one may be a slow, soft waltz, and then to a pizzicato. And we would work on changing the feeling and expression of the movement, changing how we use the eyes, depending on the music. We didn't just work on the tempo, going slower or faster when she changed the music. It was much, much more than that. So we're going to show you just second port de bras.
Can I
Oh,
just
Jean, do you have something?
back up 1 minute? Oh, we, you know what we forgot to talk about? We mustn't forget center bar, because
Oh, right,
love
yes.
center bar. We don't have an
I
example.
was going to do that next, because that always came after port de bras, the center bar. We always did port de bras and then grand battement.
Oh, okay, all right,
Yeah.
okay.
So let's do the port de bras and then we can talk about that. Okay, and now we don't have any examples of it, but we did a center bar. So we would do, grand battement combination, hard grand battement combinations. And after that, we did either tendus or dégagés, sometimes with allegro pirouettes or quick jumps in first. Jean, do you have anything to say?
No,
on
there
that?
was a lot of center bar that
Yeah.
was for the strengthening and of your placement. So you had to
Yeah,
do them
sometimes
in the center.
the rondage amateur we did.
And
A
it was
lot of difficult grand battement.
continuing to warm up the body, actually,
Yeah.
probably.
So we don't have that to show today. But after the center bar, we did adagio. And we very often did a set of adagios. And Jean, you counted how many, right? That she
Well,
taught us?
we 12. I've counted up that over the years that she taught 12. And I think that when the adagio comes into class, more of the Cicchetti weekly plan, I think Miss Craske followed more. Very often on Mondays, we do trois relevés or six relevés. Don't you remember? And then it became, as the week progressed, the more advanced adagios. So it's interesting that I think you don't, although she never said, now I'm following Cicchetti's weekly plan, she did as an overarching platform, I think, for her teaching. If you
Right.
agree?
Yes, I do. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes when we didn't do a Cicchetti set adagio, she made up these really stunning adagios. They were gorgeous, the choreography. Today, we're going to show you her teaching the glissade jeté fouetté and also the grand fouetté.
Listen, when you finish that turn, the hands come back to the hip on bar. I always have 3 or 4 of the rock. Twist on bar and then up and with the velvet. So you've got 4 movements. They come here, up and up. All right, repeat it. And
I just
I
gorgeous,
love the adagios.
gorgeous adagios. Sometimes in class we did do 2 adagios. She might start with trois relevés and then do grand fouetté, or she'll start with working on a retiré, développé front, plie, like 1, 2, 3, 4, plie 5, jeté 6, hold 7, hold 8, to the side of the knee second, to the back with the grand rond de jambe, and then work on an adagio that had that jeté in it. You know, like the glissade jeté fouetté.
The adagio was a big meat, a big part of the class.
Yeah.
Because it encompassed a lot. There were adagio pirouettes, and so it wasn't just développé. There was a lot of body movement in this. So it was a big part of class were the adagio section.
You know, we'd work on adagio pirouettes, like taking a pirouette out of one of the adagios. From rond de jambe développé, the 1, 2 with that un des dents pirouette with the rond de jambe, she would just take that out and work on it for 10 minutes
Mhm.
and then do the adagio. Pirouettes were next, and sometimes it was set, you know, like other things, sometimes it wasn't. But I think most of the time it was set, one of the set pirouette combinations. So Lily?
So the leg does come to a second, not a bad fall. And you know that's better than they don't play.
So I think, Jean, do you want to talk a little bit about the head and the rhythm?
Yeah, one thing that Miss Craske, and this comes from Cicchetti and dancers of certainly of that era, spotting pirouette. You always spotted your pirouette, and that maybe that last one is not such a good example. It was more an adagio pirouette, but we're always to spot head looking over the shoulder. The other thing is that Miss Craske, and I think this is also directly from Cicchetti, not to pirouette up on the 3/4 point, and certainly not for in years past, a man didn't do a pirouette up on 3/4 point. So you were to stay in the center. So she was very rigorous about not pushing the instep over as you pirouetted, and then to have a slight spring in the foot down when you would close. And all of the pirouettes that we did, Diana, they all had musical and rhythmic endings. One couldn't slosh through something and kind of slide down. They were to be carefully timed, which has made it all the more challenging to accomplish than
Yeah. I mean, if she did ever teach something that was way up on 3/4 point, we did it with a spring, and that was to practice a point pirouette without your point shoes.
Yeah.
That we did it with a spring up on 3/4. Rare, because we usually did them on 1/4 point. But one thing that she'd talk about, say we were working on doubles and triple pirouette, the double was always the rhythm da-da and not da-da. It was never 2 single pirouettes without coming down, which I think you do see today. And the triple was da-da-dum, and not 1, 2, 3. They were never spins. They were always, honest to goodness, pirouettes, which is something different. You know, really worked on rhythm. So we worked a lot on Petit Allegro, almost always doing it front and back. We're going to show you a couple things, but we did like 16 temps de cuisse forward, 16 temps de cuisse back, and then she'd do temps de cuisse, pas de bourrée, entrecôte, something like that, where we did brisé soutenu 3 with a grand changement, 4 times forward, 4 times back. So these are just a couple things that we found that I thought were interesting.
And over one arm at a time. 2. Continue the arms on as you take the high and then take them apart. Don't cut the stage short. Yeah, the hand healing forms come to this. 1 and 2. That's it. So pull a movement, you feel a hand. And
Yeah, no examples front and back, but they're very lovely petite allegro steps.
Well, we did all the beating steps. I was remember Entrechacot Volpe.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know that that's done so much anymore. I don't know, I've not seen it too much. Many of the enchaînements were always done forward and back.
Mhm.
I'm sorry we don't have more examples,
Yeah.
but we can, they're
Well,
in the
another
manual.
time, another time. We have a whole month of
Yes.
classes of hers. So we're just kind of picking what, because it's from 1978, they're very disintegrated, and I tried to pick out things that are at least a little clear, but hopefully we can get them. I think they can redo them. I'm not sure. I have to talk to the library about it, but another time we can show more. Grand Allegro is, again, sometimes set, sometimes something she'd choreograph. We always worked very, very hard on musicality and finding the top of the movement. And I have to say the tempos were not always comfortable. This is something Miss Craske did. Sometimes it was like, oh, that's too slow. And she would say, it's not too slow, you're too fast. I remember her. Do you remember her saying that when we were off the music? And one day she just said that you never know about a conductor. They might be in a bad mood. They might not be feeling well. Find a way to make it happen. And for me, it was such a valuable lesson, because many years ago, I was guesting and doing Sugar Plum, and the conductor had a horrible case of the flu. He was so sick, and there was no one to go in for him. So he conducted. And I think the pas de deux, I felt like it went on for 15 minutes. It was so slow. And the variation, that's usually about a minute and a half, it had to be 4 minutes long that night. And thank goodness for Miss Craske, because she taught you how to deal with it and how to make it work and not go below that line, you know, of performance. And yeah, we did it a lot to tempos that weren't always comfortable. So we just have one example, the full contretemps with an ensemble. I just want to say, Betty Jones was one of the people going across from the Moan Company, and many modern dancers studied with Margaret Craske, Carolyn Brown, Viola Farber, Betty Jones, Sarah Stackhouse, Paul Taylor. I think because Miss Craske taught you how to dance, you know. What do you think, Jean? That it was unusual to have so many, in those days, to have so many modern dancers in the class. Many Cunningham dancers, many would come.
Well, I think how Miss Craske taught really from the Cicchetti aesthetic. It was very pure and almost, you want to say almost natural, that the body worked as a unit, and with the épaulement and the use of the head and the coordination of the arms, it was very organic. And it's not an artificial way of dancing. It's a pure, that's why it's so beautiful. There's no affectation with it. And that's certainly how Miss Craske taught, to be very, very simple and to be true. There had to be a truth in your movement. And I think that still should apply and does apply should apply to today's dancing forever.
Yeah. So the next thing, the ladies went to change their shoes and the men did men's steps. So we only have one to show. They're doing the temps de poisson.
You gave me just now, which was very good. And
I'm on camera.
you don't make up your mind about this thing. There are two students having their legs out here. They remain together. Go on the other side. And
Anything, Jean?
Well, Diana, you had said that I thought was a fun comment, that how Miss Craske really liked the men, and there were often lots of men in her class, and I think she really liked jumping. I have a feeling she was a very good jumper herself, and so she appreciated the differences from the male dancing and more feminine side for the women.
Yeah. Well, I know once she told me that she had to jump like a man. In those days, it wasn't very interesting. I remember that. So at the end of the technique class, we did 15 minutes of point, and we also had an hour and 15-minute point class on Thursdays, and the children had an hour point class on Saturdays, and we were all permitted to take that beginner class as well. So we worked on many different kinds of relevés and poses, and just here are a few things that she gave.
And I want this pressure from you. I'll take it more slowly so you have to get it. And not too fast. And
Ooh, I've forgotten that one exercise. I'm going to give that tomorrow.
So that's all the film we have. Jean, do you have anything to wrap up? And then we can take questions?
Well, I just want to say that it's been really 45 years since Miss Craske last taught, and so much has changed in the dance world. But the goal of her class every day was for us and her students to attempt to achieve like a harmony of your poised posture with musical and rhythmic coordination with the head and the arms, and épaulement with the legs and the feet. And that's a hallmark of what she taught. Is she taught for the whole body to dance, and not just legs and feet. So she did it all. She encompassed everything that needed to be taught and accomplished in her class. She was extraordinary. There's no doubt about it.
So we can take questions in the chat. There is one that it was interesting to see the men perform Pas de Bourrée Carrou in the Adagio. And in that one, they happened to do that. But I know in third and fourth arabesque, sometimes, not all the time, she would have the men walk instead of doing the bourrée.
Yeah.
But I never remember it in Grand Fouetté. They always did the bourrée.
Mhm.
Did she, here's a question. Did she often reference Cecchetti in her classes and comment on what he may have said? Jean?
I don't
remember.
it's interesting. Obviously it was the basis of what she taught, but she didn't really talk a lot about Cecchetti. She didn't say, okay, it's Monday now, we'll do assembly, yet very often we did assembly Cecchetti. And she would say, but Diana, I don't remember her really invoking his name in class a lot. Do you? Maybe in private,
No.
in conversations. She might in a conversation after class, or if you saw her more outside of class. But that was the root, the meat of her was the Cecchetti syllabus. That's how I remember it.
Yeah, I don't remember her speaking about Cecchetti in class or when we'd have dinner. It wasn't, he didn't come up, but we talked about dancing a lot.
Mhm.
But just his name didn't come up. But yeah, does anybody else have anything? I know, Barbara, you'd said someone wanted to ask a question because, oh wait, here's one. And then there was someone who wanted to speak that couldn't do the chat.
That's me.
But we do have one here. How did a person get into her class? You auditioned. You had to meet her, take the class. She evaluated whether she wanted to teach you. And she didn't take everyone.
What's interesting is in the earlier days when she was teaching at Ballet Arts and Metropolitan Opera School, that would have been like in the 50s. It was people didn't because of their professional life would come and go out of class. So as I understand that really wasn't until she was going to actually retire then when the Met Ballet School closed, and Mr. Osorio, who was in some of the video, opened a school for her. So then when she could it was more private, and she was very open in who she took, but if she didn't want to, she didn't have to. So it was more by audition, and that's when she really started to teach all the Cecchetti work, because the core of her students were there continually. So you could work on an adagio. If you were a professional dancer coming in and out, she couldn't work on it the way she did with actually, we were the beneficiaries of those years.
Yeah, the last 20 years of her teaching. Lily, can you have Judith Jepson, can you unmute her so that she can talk?
I see her.
Yeah.
She's unmuted and she's spotlighted.
Okay, I have to say a few things that one thing she threw me out of her class at the Met. She just didn't. She took a scunner at me for some whatever reason. Mr. Tudor took me, but she couldn't deal with me. But I watched many of her classes, and what you have not brought to this fascinating discussion is how she taught as a person and that inimitable voice. And one anecdote of hers is in the paper I wrote that you will receive, but it's what Edward Caton told me late in the 60s when I began to work with him, and I knew him until he died. He said, when I first began to teach in New York in the 40s, my classes were very popular. And Margaret, as he called her, in this rusty voice he had, came and watched class. And after class, I asked her what she thought. And she said, well, it was a wonderful performance, Eddie. And he said, I cut the comedy and began to really teach. And my classes were no longer popular. And one thing she said while I was watching class, now at the Met, you came in on the floor of the studio, and then you climbed up some steps and went across where there was a bench so you could watch. And that's the level the office and the dressing rooms are. And in the girls' dressing room, that building was falling down, and you had to flush the John very quickly and then run madly out the door because the water would follow you out the door. A young man, and so there were steps down into the studio. So she was teaching the class before mine, and she gave a combination, and the fellow, and she's asked him to do one pirouette. And this young man, very young, he was late teens, early 20s, whatever. And he did more. And she said, I told you to do one pirouette. Sit down over there and think of your sins. And he duly went over and sat on the steps. Now, you can't do that nowadays. You have to say, dear, did you not misunderstand me? Please do. And, you have to cover them with goo. You can't get down to nitty gritty and just, she just, hey, that's it, Buster. Take the consequences. But when you talk of her dealing with male dancers, I followed a friend of mine to the Met from Washington, D.C., and this young man was very stockily built. He came back to D.C., I was still in high school, and took class where I was, and the difference in his physique was incredible. She pared inches off of him. And many years later, I was going into Freddie Franklin's studio in Washington to take my grade 3 teacher's exam, and a young man standing at their bar said to me, hello, Judith. And I looked around, and I had seen him from the back, and he'd been to Craske. And again, he was pared down. What she did to those two bodies alone was incredible. It was just, remarkable to see the difference in what she could do. And I'll have to say that when I was teaching simply in a county program in rec, I had 2 students who were about 14 or so. I only had them one season, but I was teaching from a Cecchetti basis, though I was not teaching strict Cecchetti, but that was my foundation, as it were. And by the end of the season, those 2 girls' legs looked rather different. So, but the quality that Miss Craske brought to her teaching was not only the work, but the way she presented it with this absolute aplomb and assurance and that marvelous voice, think of your sins. That was nearly 70 years ago.
Yeah. That's it. We just got a question from Linda Casper. that we should mention what great wit Miss Craske had, strict but witty. Jean, do you want to,
Oh,
do you have any stories?
oh, well, I don't know. I can't, but she was very, very witty. Oh, absolutely.
So funny.
No, Miss Craske was very strict. But underneath all of that was a great, you felt very supported. You felt that she could be pretty rough with people, but it was for their good. And it's true. I don't know that you people would accept it now. I don't know. But you always knew that she wanted you to dance well.
Well, I don't think it was about you personally in a way. It was to make you open, to open up to possibilities, and also in how you get into a role, to kind of leave the ego, leave yourself and become that role. You know, things like, you know, that, I mean, Tudor did that too. But she was very, very witty. I mean, you were just in the middle of class, you couldn't stop laughing sometimes.
I can't think of it in I wish I
Yeah,
could.
that's what I can on the spur of the moment.
Pull an example from the sky. I can't. Just to say that she was very witty.
Yeah. I just remember one story for me. I'm not going to say the name of the person, but there was a principal dancer from a ballet company in class. And Miss Craske used to always be on me about being affected. And this person was in the class when I was in the class, and Miss Craske said, you know, Diana, you dance just like that other woman. She always used to call her the other woman. I thought I would die because she was in the class about my being affected. It's not, it's a little hard to tell it in a way, but it was very funny. Does anybody have anything else in the chat? Oh, hang on, Linda. Okay. I think that's all we have. So Barbara, I think, let's see, we are at an hour and a half. So maybe it's time to end.
Yeah, if unless other people have comments or questions, or I know we have a lot of people here who are syllabus Cecchetti teachers from various places, and we know these adagios, and we all have our own ways of teaching them and emphasizing various things. If there's anybody who wants to comment there, I think they're probably, we could go on for hours just talking about some of those between us. But it's been
well, so they introduced me at the beginning, and you couldn't see me and you couldn't hear me.
well, now we can hear you.
have more. I don't look too good today, but I want to thank you so much for bringing this information and those lovely videos to all of us. They were absolutely fascinating. And I just want to add one thing. I told Barbara I was going to do this. I was going to ask you, did you know that Margaret Craske had a school in England with Laura Wilson, who was also a pupil of Cecchetti's? And they taught together before she came here to the United States.
And I've
So
been told
Yes,
that Laura Wilson was very taught beautifully port-de-bras. That was one of the highlights of her teaching, was a beautiful coordination of port-de-bras. I don't know if that's true. I was told that.
Well, I worked with Laura. I actually lived with her, and I ate chicken livers for 5 straight days. Okay. She did have beautiful port-de-bras because she had, like Pavlova, very long arms, which is one of the reasons I was sent to study with her, because I have long arms. Nothing else is long on me but my arms work. And she did a lot with this giving middle fist and the projection of movement. But I thought it was fascinating because when I went to England, I never knew until I was living with Laura that she and Margaret Craske had a school together. That was just before Craske left, and I thought it was most fascinating. And then people would go from England to study with Margaret Craske before taking exams in England, and vice versa. We would all be going to England. So there was still, she worked with a lot of people and helping prepare them for their exams. So but I want to thank you for providing such wonderful information to the Institute.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I think Miss Craske had a company as well in England for a short time.
And she also choreographed for the Don Carlo Opera Company in,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
in England. Mhm.
Mhm. We did have a question, or the videos at the library, the performing arts. They should be there because they were sent there many, many years ago. Oh gosh, 30 years ago, maybe. They were sent. I haven't seen them at the library. They might be better quality than what I have, but I haven't seen them. I should go and take a look and see if they have been. I don't know what they do to them, but if they're a better quality. So everyone, thank you. Thanks so much for being here. It was really wonderful.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the preparation that went into it, for the sharing, for spending time with each other. There aren't enough thank yous, I don't think. It's been wonderful, and I think there will be others to follow, because I think we've just kind of started to explore some of this kind of thing. I also want to thank Lily and Monica in the background for taking such good care of all the technology and making this work. I think we're going to have a nice recording from this as a result. The Getty Institute will have some more Sunday lectures coming up. I don't feel free to share the topics, or we don't have time yet because things haven't been settled with a lot of people, but there are more things in the works.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you to the Cicchetti Institute.
Thank you so much.
This was a pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
All right.
So everyone, thank you. Thanks so much for being here. It was really wonderful.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the preparation that went into it, for the sharing, for spending time with each other. There aren't enough thank yous, I don't think. It's been wonderful, and I think there will be others to follow, because I think we've just kind of started to explore some of this kind of thing. I also want to thank Lily and Monica in the background for taking such good care of all the technology and making this work. I think we're going to have a nice recording from this as a result. The Getty Institute will have some more Sunday lectures coming up. I don't feel free to share the topics, or we don't have time yet because things haven't been settled with a lot of people, but there are more things in the works.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you to the Cicchetti Institute.
Thank you so much.
This was a pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.